Quiet, it's starting! We all watched as a black screen replaced the countdown. It gradually faded into a first-person perspective of someone traveling through a forest. The detail in the scene was breathtaking. The stream followed our mystery protagonist as it showcased the scenery of the surrounding forest. Is this a live-action trailer? Deckard asked before we all shushed him down. The musical score suddenly changed as a growl broke the serenity of the scene and the perspective spun quickly to see a massive gray wolf leap upon the protagonist, knocking them to the ground. We could see the saliva covering the wolf's teeth as it moved in for the kill. 2 arrows suddenly burst into the wolf's head with a spray of blood, and the protagonist shoves the dead wolf off. A leather-gloved hand enters the scene and helps the protagonist up. It's not safe out here. You should be more careful. That was incredible. Nothing like Vision Quest, Peter said with a grin. Though it didn't tell us that much. It looked so real. Zach shook his head. I hope it wasn't fake. Are we sure it wasn't live action? It was glorious, Deckard grunted. Bring up their website. How do we get in on this? Sure. A quick search brought up Ascend Online's website. It was bare at best. It featured a repeat of the stream we just watched, with a countdown taking over the majority of the page. There were only 2 small paragraphs of information on the page. Ascend Online is a fantasy-based, full-immersion VRMMORPG. To find out how to join us for our upcoming worldwide release, please click here. The first thing that the primer explained to us was that Ascend Online didn't use the traditional virtual reality, VR, as we understood it. We wouldn't be expected to throw on a VR headset, place a few sensors on us and play. That was what Vision Quest tried to do about 10 years ago. Ascend Online was pioneering full immersion virtual reality, FIVR technology, which, thanks to the recent advances in nanotechnology, we would be able to experience a video game directly, without having to rely on a screen, headset, or computer. All the information would be fed directly into our brain through the use of nanobots, or nanites, while our physical bodies were placed into a sort of artificial hibernation. From our perspective, our new reality would be one of the game world. The one downside to this level of immersion was the overhead required. Because we needed constant monitoring during our unconscious state, we needed to play the game from within a capsule, or pod, housed at a CTI player housing facility. The pod would regularly inject our comatose bodies with the required nanites to maintain our connection with the Ascend Online universe, as well as provide the needed nutrients to keep our physical bodies alive. It wouldn't do to let players die while they were playing your game, right?
That was a section of a book called Ascend Online. I will admit I added some sound effects and music because I can't help myself. I'm a video editor. But the story itself is an amazing book series, and I got a chance to sit down with the author, Luke, and this is that conversation.
Hey, Luke.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through.
Awesome. How's your day going?
Good. How about yours?
No, it's not too bad. We're just starting up here, so
Right on.
it's what do you call it? It's a good day so far. I can't complain.
Very cool. Are you in Canada, U.S.?
Yeah, just outside of Toronto. If you're roughly familiar with the area.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I took a couple years ago. I took a drive from Atlanta up to Toronto for a day.
Yeah.
Stayed the night, drove right back.
Yeah, No, it's a bit of a long drive, but yeah, no, you probably passed. I'm on Burlington, so you would have driven straight through us probably.
Okay.
It's just on the way to Toronto, kind of just like on the outskirts of the major cities. So, but yeah, it works out. Nice place to live. I'm a little biased, but you know how it
Yeah.
goes. Whereabouts are you? Are you in Atlanta or are you out west?
No, I grew up in Atlanta. Yeah, out west now. Just kind of jumping. I do something. I kind of live out of Airbnbs, so I'll just rent one for a month and kind of jump around.
For
So I'm
sure.
in Washington right now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
No, it's not bad. If you
Yeah,
enjoy
definitely.
the nice weather, hopefully, and kind of get what do you call it, early spring, summer, I guess. I'm not sure how what do you call humid it'd be over in Washington at this time of the year.
Yeah, it's like really close to Canada this section, so it's yeah, it's like right
Just
in that transitional period.
yeah, or like close to BC then, British Columbia,
Right.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's great.
BC. Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, thanks for joining.
No, no worries.
Yeah, I picked up Ascend Online because I was looking for I was looking to fill that Ready Player One hole I had,
Yeah,
and
awesome.
Ascend Online I think surpassed, in my view, um,
Oh, it's
when I
no,
read
I'm
it.
glad you enjoyed it. That was
Yeah,
great.
yeah, it's a great, absolute great series.
You have what do you call it? If you're looking to jump in the whole genre, you have what do you call crazy amount of options. There's tons of books, similar books. I mean, all depends on what you want to read, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting genre. Yeah, for those unfamiliar, can you kind of briefly describe what lit RPG is?
For sure. So, the best way I can describe it, LitRPG is taking basically game like the traditional RPG gamey stuff that we love and enjoy, and kind of just putting it in a more narrative format. So, I mean, if you like online MMO games, it kind of transitions it into, a what if story of, here's an online game that has maybe a different game system than something we may be able to play nowadays, right? Maybe it has super smart npcs that are kind of AI driven, or maybe the npcs are actually aliens or something and they're testing humanity in some capacity. But it kind of gives that endorphin rush that you get playing games. Everything's very rule based, very finite, and just kind of just putting it in like a nice traditional fantasy, sci-fi, or even modern day novel, and you kind of have that, what do you call, gamey aspect, but also just more like even a more traditional book narrative fantasy aspect.
So that's interesting. So it can, because I would say the only lit RPG I've read is your series. So
Mm.
I'm interested to expand more on that aspect of the maybe non gaming um, part of it. So would a book that maybe deals with, like you mentioned, like aliens or creatures in the physical world, would that still be considered a lit RPG?
So, like a literary RPG is almost like it's this thing that you kind of put into the book, and that's maybe not the best way to describe it. So, I mean, a lit RPG is essentially the gamification of whatever your story is. So I mean, it's the presence of the stats. It's making things. You have like a very clear cut, almost like mechanical, like progression, for lack of a better word, in the story. So I mean, if you look at Ascend Online, like the Ascend Online world is a game. So I mean, you have reality that exists. The Ascend Online is the actual game, an actual like game that exists within the world, and people log into it. They play it in a very traditional kind of fashion, as if it were like an MMO, what we understand nowadays. Um, it in itself is a game. The other aspects in the genre is they draw a lot from Portal Fantasy. So say that it's almost, it could you almost be like Jumanji, or it could also be like a secret world, like like literally like a Narnia closet, and you just go to this parallel dimension that for some reason runs on game-like mechanics. So I mean, every single story has a different kind of twist to it, depending on just what the author wants and what more finite subgenre it falls into. But then those ones are alternate worlds that happen to run on GameStats, and maybe not as a game directly, if that makes sense. So I mean, there's a ton of different flavors and subgenres within the RPG. I mean, that could be a whole conversation in itself on how what kind of aspect that people have written, what kind of aspects people want. It's yeah, it's overwhelming. Like anyone can find something they like.
Yeah, it seems like it definitely seems like a newer genre that's kind of emerging, I would say. I mean, how long has it been around? Do you know?
So like in terms of super popularity, it's kind of came around I think 2014, and then it kind of was a bit of a cult following, I want to say, until probably about 2017, 18, and then around then is when it started to get much more popular, and you kind of just had more books being released, just increasing kind of exponentially almost every month. And I would say it's at its pinnacle right now. Like now is about as popular as it's ever been. So I mean, there's I couldn't even tell you, probably 20 books a week coming out, if not more. If you look just through Amazon, you'd be probably really hard pressed not to find a LitRPG book of some sort in your list. I mean, they're just so prevalent, and there's so many different slices of genres that are coming out that people enjoy to read. So yeah, it's exploding at this point in time.
That's cool. Are there any specific books or authors within that genre that you are a fan of personally?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, the best way I can describe, there's a lot of subgenres within the greater genre. So I mean, if you're looking for kind of like a cross between virtual reality and alternate world stuff, the Coda Credit stuff is good. He's best known for his Divine Dungeon series, which is more of what is called a dungeon core series. I'm not sure if I can do 100% justice in describing it because there's so many nuances to it, but essentially a dungeon core is a spirit that lives inside of a dungeon. So you have to think of it kind of a sentient dungeon that normally would build the dungeon for heroes to come and take stuff from it. But there's a twist for it. The dungeon doesn't want to have stuff taken from it, and it needs these heroes to come and give it the stuff that it needs. So it builds traps within the dungeons. It tries to make it appealing to heroes, so then it can either eat the heroes, or take control of the heroes, or just kind of continue to grow and expand. There are a ton of different nuances depending on how it's done and how it kind of expands from there. So I say if you're interested, check out Dakota's book first and foremost, and then and evolve from that point. One of the next biggest books, kind of similar-ish to mine, would be Awaken Online. That is kind of a virtual reality book written by Travis Bagwell. It's a similar spirit as mine, except that Travis did a really good anti-hero. So you have the player playing as a villain in the book, and he gets involved in a crap ton of trouble. He gets to use a bunch of dark magic, which is super fun. The main character is actually a necromancer, which is like very rare to be seen in any sort of kind of fun published fiction. And it's just a fun ride. It's a fun ride, like all the way around. The next book would be a good portal fantasy, would be Jez Kelzio's Brightblade. I actually like that one quite a bit. I managed to talk with Jez as he was writing it, and it's just one of those hidden world things. I mean, you have a whole reality that exists separate from Earth, and it runs on game mechanics, and it kind of crosses over between what our world is today and this whole secret underworld, for lack of a better word. And it's much more of a portal fantasy, but it strikes all the right notes. It's just a ton of fun from beginning to end. And I'm trying to think. Michael Chatfield has the 10 Realms series. This one is kind of a blur between I would say like traditional Eastern like cultivation novels. If you've read anything along those lines, it's more of kind of just a subtle like personal power progression without the game mechanics. But he also does cross over with the more traditional game mechanic stuff. So this one is also like Portal Fantasy. It's kind of like a middle ground between Portal Fantasy and Portal Sci-Fi. is a really good blend, but it's also kind of its own separate genre from the greater like lit RPG thing. And it's fantastic. It's just a ton of fun. There's a ton of books out in all of those series, and I think those are like probably the best starting points that anyone can get a good cross section of the genre.
Interesting. One of the things that I find really cool about specifically that genre, and maybe this might apply to fantasy as a wider fairy tales, but the world itself almost feels like it has a certain characteristic, or it's almost like a character in and of itself. Maybe
Yep.
in this case, the game. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like the different tools that you sort of implement when you're writing these stories.
For sure. So I'd say like the biggest thing for any lit RPG novel is the system. Like that's is a game that the people are gonna experience, and some like I was like personally from my perspective, I'm a very nuts and bolts. So I really like having a good idea of why is this fun? Why does this game exist? What are the rules kind of behind it, and how is it driven, right? So I mean, like if you Ascend Online is a very traditional kind of gamey game. So I mean, you have more of the computer aspected elements. You have the AIs that are running it. The AIs may or may not have their own personalities in how they approach the functioning of the world, right? In other stories, I like to see that if they're progression fantasy, they're more gods, right? So, like the whole world itself is um, an experiment run by the gods. They're deciding to quantify everything to the most nth degree that they possibly can, so they have the most control over whatever experiment they may be running in the context of this story or world or whatever the situation might be, right? So I feel like that makes the world feel like a bit more fleshed out. I mean, because you have to quantify so many things, because you have to make sure that you're consistent with whatever rules that you're applying, I feel it leans a lot more towards the hard magic kind of aspect in some stuff. Some stuff can maybe be a bit softer and fuzzy, but we get used to in fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, is you don't really understand how magic works. It's just kind of there, and you don't quite you know what it's capable of or not. But usually for most lit RPG books, you have a pretty solid understanding of what limitations are. You have a clear progression of when those limitations can be broken and under what conditions they can be broken. Because it's usually fun to break the rules, right? But then if you can't do it too often, or it just loses its meaning, right? So I feel like that's the biggest draw of it, right? Is you establish a system, you get a sense of rules that the readers can love and enjoy, and just have fun. You play with it. You just you go bonkers.
Yeah. When you were writing Ascend Online to begin with, did you have that in your mind going into it, or did it sort of build upon?
A bit of both. I mean, I've always said like my inspiration for Ascend Online has always been like World of Warcraft and EverQuest. I mean, those my two biggest favorite games. I always kind of thought of like what didn't I get out of those games, and what did I really enjoy out of those games. So, I mean, I kind of just use that as kind of my back mindset of how I wanted to articulate the playstyle, right? I mean, it's very just very progression based, very small based. You know what I mean? Like you start off with very little, you literally get dropped into world naked, which is like a super just fun to play with, right? And I mean, the whole fun aspect of oh, you got your first sword, you know what I mean, you've made your first set of armor, and then it sounds like kind of silly when you say it out loud, but when you're actually playing and experiencing a game, that means a lot, right? I mean, you open your first treasure chest, and like what do you find in there? You get that nice rush of like I'm finally wearing clothes, or what I mean, I've killed my first goblin or something like that, right? So I feel like that's I just dialed into that. I mean, that's it's kind of just got there and just kind of build upon that as I figure I need more stuff to round the story out.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing that struck me when I was reading it is that it's almost like the stakes that the characters are going through don't necessarily have like a reverberation in the physical world, in the sense that like if a villain comes, they aren't going to actually like they're not going to actually die, but it
Yeah,
feels like when you're reading it, and it feels like to the characters the stakes are there.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that depends a lot on the book in question, but I mean, yeah. So I mean, like I wrote Ascend Online to be a lighter experience in that sense because it's again, it's silly to say, but it's a passion project. I mean, like this is the game that I would want to play, right? I mean, I know there are things that may not necessarily translate into a fun game if it were to exist exactly how it existed, but um, it's a fun experience that makes your time in the game worthwhile. I mean, you if you play online games, you know, on MMOs and stuff, you have those PvP griefers that'll just come and wreck your day, right? They'll just stand on top of your body, and then they won't let you resurrect, or they'll, you know, dump a bunch of mobs on you. And that sort of relationship, like when you play, I mean, that can be you know, a great rivalry, right? I mean, anyone who's played, you know, Warcraft back in the day, and they've had those epic world PvP fights, you know what I mean? That you know, you spend 3-4 hours just duking it out in the woods, and you just feel like you get something from it, right? So I mean, at the end of the day, like you just get up and you walk away from it, and it doesn't really actually mean anything for you in the world, but you had a ton of fun in the process, right? So I feel like from approaching it from a game perspective like that, where you don't actually need to worry about getting killed in the real world is refreshing. I think it's just a fun experience is what I kind of wanted to channel into Ascend Online in particular, right? But in one of my other books, for Savage Dominion in particular, it is a LitRPG book. It's more of a portal fantasy book in this regard, and if you die, you have serious repercussions, right? I mean, like like aside from losing all your stuff, you lose a lot of physical power. If you die too many times, you're just going to end up getting, um, you just end up getting screwed. Like you lose part of your mind. You can eventually go insane from repeated deaths or whatever because that's just how the story is kind of set up. In that case, right? It's a much more higher stakes story. It has much more cosmic impact for the story in question. Um, I think yeah. So I mean, that's what I really love about the lit RPG genre in general, is because you can tell more stories that are about the journey rather than the struggle. If that sense makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Disrupt Audio Frequency podcast will return soon after these messages.
Hey there, Jack here. Over the past few years, we've been building a platform called Disrupt Plus, and my goal with it is to build something that removes the barrier from me to you. So for every subscription, it's $3.50 per month, you can find original films and shows from both myself and other creators, and it's our aim to build something that's basically our own Netflix or Hulu, so that we don't have to go through a gatekeeper. So if you enjoy Disrupt's free content, I think you'll dig the premium content that we're building on the platform. You can find it at www.disrupt.plus in your web browser. Peace.
Welcome back.
Can you take us through the process of co-writing? Because Savage Dominion is a sort of a collaboration, is that correct?
Yeah. So I wrote this one with GD Penman. He's out in Scotland, and we just got connected through mutual friends, through my the other publisher I'm working with, Wraithmark Creative. That one we originally partnered with Bryce for some of my other series, The Shattered Reigns and Iron Prince. Regardless, we partnered together with Graham, and it's been a fantastic experience. I mean, generally, for the process of co-writing that works for me is it's a lot of planning. I mean, again, like I'm a very nuts and bolts in planning kind of guy. Either one of us will have like a seed idea. So in this case, Graham had a pretty clear idea on what he wanted to do for Savage Dominion, and it was just in terms of what do you call it? Just talking through it, planning it out, what fit the tropes of the genre, what kind of parts of LitRPG we wanted to fit it into, which in this case was more of a portal fantasy. We didn't want to have to do like a more gamey kind of like virtual reality MMO where you have to go back and forth between the real world or not. So regardless, once we had an idea, basic of those basic foundations, we just outlined the crap out of the book. I mean, like it was probably several thousand words from beginning to end of what sort of powers do we get, what kind of like progression from stats do we get, how do they level up, or do they level up in the first place? I mean, that was kind of a consideration that we had and how we wanted to handle that kind of progression. And from there, it would just kind of be like getting the whole story outlined, and then we basically Graham ran with that story for the biggest chunk, and we would just check in every so often. If there were parts that weren't working, I'd offer advice, I'd edit, I go back and forth. Um, the the co-writing novel that I've found, or the co-writing process I found that works best for me is one person has to be the champion. So whether that's me or whoever I'm partnering with, because they would be the most committed to actually seeing it finished. Like with any project, right? I mean, you don't want to, if you split 50 something 50-50, you get flashbacks to those school group projects that don't actually get done. So I mean, it's very clear to have a sense of, for someone to have a sense of ownership of the project, and they're essentially, you know, the champion of the project. They need to finish it. They need to make sure that the vision is upheld, and then the other person is supporting them to do that. So I mean, that's whether that's rewriting a chapter, whether that's editing, whether that's just taking off all the administrative stuff off their plate so they can focus on the writing. It's honestly been a bit of a catch-all kind of experience, but that's worked extremely well for all, like for both for Graham and all of my co-writes with Bryce and a couple of the other ones I have going on as well.
Very cool. And are you fully self-published, or you work with?
So I'm fully self-published, although I partner for all my audiobooks is through Podium, Audible, and Tantor. So I have various projects with them on the audio side of things. I mean, that's not a particularly big nuance when it comes. I mean, not traditionally published on the in a typical sense, but on the audiobook side, that's just the what do you call the details and heavy lifting and actually getting an audiobook done and published is was beyond my reach for the longest time. And I just found that partnering with the studios gives me just the security of, you know, I don't need to hire a narrator on myself. I don't need to do all the vetting and the edit and figure out the editing and all the nuts and bolts of actually getting the book out. And it's been a fantastic experience with all of them. So I mean, that's personally worked out for me very well.
Was there a reason you went the independent route for the like physical release?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, it kind of writing things started off as a hobby. I didn't really expect to get where I was, and that, I don't mean that as a bad way. I mean, I started off as a hobby. I posted the first Ascend Online book for free, actually, on Royal Road, which is a serial website. And I just honestly lucked out with popularity. I mean, I think I wrote this in my spare time when I was just bored. I think I ended up with about 15 chapters of Ascend Online. And then I was kind of hemming and hawing on whether or not I wanted to continue writing. So I just posted everything for free online, and I think within a month I had about 1,500 people following me to finish the story, and then I realized I had to finish the story. So I finished it. I got it done. I had a friend willing to help edit and just go through all the detail, and then I just kind of said, you know, what the heck? Let's just put it on Amazon, see what happens. And the reception was great. I mean, I think I hit the book at the right time. It had the right notes that people were looking for like for the early LitRPG crowd. And the rest is history. I mean, I had a great amount of success. I decided to write another book really quickly, and then I wrote a third book really quickly, and then all of those kind of took off, and it did well enough that I was able to change jobs. I originally used to work in IT security, and now I write full time.
That's rad. How long did the first one take you?
How long did the first one take me? That's a good question. I think I started writing it off and on in 2015. And then I took a long pause because I just didn't know if I wanted to keep writing. And then I think once I decided I wanted to keep writing, it took me about 6 months to finish the book. So I think I finished the first book in about maybe 8 months of total writing time. And then I think the second book I was supposed to be held to pay. I finished in 3 months, I think exactly. I think I timed myself. It was exactly 90 days from beginning to end. And then Legacy of the Fallen, I think I did in about 7 months.
Wow.
So that was a very busy 7 months, but I did that, and then I burnt out, and I got involved in too many projects, and it took me, I think, about almost close to 2 years to finish book 4. So that just I was just overextended myself, did too much work in a short window, and my brain went to mush. But
Yeah.
we're getting back on it. Treating myself a little better going forward.
Right on. Right on. What is your like work day like? Say like wake up.
Yeah, so generally, I like to do all my stuff early in the morning. I'm unfortunately a morning person, or fortunately a morning person, depending on which what someone's view is. But yeah, morning. I usually generally wake up, coffee to keep the brain going, food, normal stuff, and then depending on what's happening in the house, I'll either start writing right away, get an hour or 2 hours in of writing. At the start of the day, or if everybody's up early, I usually will start writing somewhere between 8 and 9. Probably write for about 3 hours, depending on how it goes. Take a break for lunch for about an hour or two, and then I'll probably write another 3 to 4 hours. Sometimes administrative stuff takes over. My general low point, like a low or soft goal of the day, is to get at least 1,000 words done. That's usually achievable unless like the administrative stuff really takes over, or what do you call it? I'm really stuck. On a good day, I can usually get between like anywhere between 2 to 5,000 words in. The 5,000 word days are rarer than I want them to be, but I tend to speed up towards the end of the book. Usually, once I have everything all figured out, I can string along 3 to 4 to 5,000 days consecutively really quickly, because there's no mystery left. You just need to beat the end the boss, and then you just kind of slap everything out, and then you're happy, and then you turn into a big puddle of stress. And you're like, oh, I'm done. You got 4 or 5 days to kind of relax, and then you realize you got to go clean up the mess that you made with the book. But that's great, at least it's finished, right? So I mean, that's the biggest part, is just the finishing part. But yeah, that's generally how the day goes. I mean, there are bits and moving pieces, again, depending on how many administrative pieces come in. I have a lot of projects and stuff going on that are over and above just the writing. So I mean, I feel that it's it just depends. I mean, I'm not a typical author in the terms I just have like one project on the go. I've just have quite a few projects on the go, so there's quite a bit of gear changing depending on the day. But in a nutshell, yeah, usually it's about an 8 hour workday split over 10 to 12 hours, depending on how the day breaks apart.
Yeah. So you'll actually will you jump in between writing projects, or do you like block out a day for?
I either block out a day or block out half days. So usually, like I use a lunch as a transition point. So usually in the morning, it'll be either my main writing project or main editing project, and then I flip towards the end of the day for more whatever else is going on. Typically, if I need to do creative stuff, I like to do it in the morning, because I just awake and smarter in the morning when it comes to that. For more administrative stuff and planning stuff, I love to shove that into the afternoon, because it doesn't need creative energy, it just needs more logical energy, which I just feel works for me, right? I mean, I used to be more creative in the evening, and then I suddenly wasn't. I mean, I used to love writing. I usually didn't start writing when I was still working until 6 or 7 at night, and then I'd get all my energy done, or get all my work done at the end of the day. And then I felt as I got started to work from home on a more regular basis once I left my job and started writing full time, that just snapped right to the beginning of the day. And I feel if I like 3 o'clock is my cutoff for creativity, and then I feel dumb. I feel like a bag of mush, and I can't barely string words together at that point in time.
Hmm. And you're finding that's sustainable for you?
Yeah, it works. I mean, part of the reason why I found that book 4 took the longest time is because of burnout. I found that when I was juggling both jobs, both my daytime job and my writing job, I was on and working for like easily, 12, 14 hours a day. When I was pretty much any moment where I wasn't sleeping, I was doing some form of work, and I kind of got used to that. So I mean, even when I left working, I would work 12, 14 hours a day. And I mean, that's, again, it's not super consistent work, but it's just being on, and the manuscript is open, the emails are open, and that hurt for the longest time. And then I actually had to do a big mental transition and carving out some me time. And the last, a year almost, maybe a little less than a year, once I figured out that I had to actually take breaks, which again sounds dumb, but once you figure out you have to take breaks, it's been great. Yeah, and everything is nice and sustainable. I have a ton of projects. I feel even though I have more work ahead of me, just everything is getting done faster. So it's just one of those quirks of being self-employed, and you gotta keep grinding and figuring out what works best for you, right?
Definitely. Do you ever find yourself stuck on a specific story piece or character, or
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't want to say all the time, but it just depends. I mean, depending when you reach a certain point in your outline, sometimes you're just finding that things don't work, or you just can't find the words that can make it as impactful as you might have thought it might have been in the outline. Um, there's different ways of, I guess, I kind of end up solving it. Most of the time, it's just leaving it alone. I have enough projects that I'm just able to kind of walk away from it for a day or a couple days, and then just not stress about it. And then usually I just find a different path and try to get out of it. I've had some times where it's been a real block, either in editing. I just find that either a reader is pointed out to me that there's a big plot hole, or just some logic just doesn't work in my mind, where I feel that could potentially just break down in the next book if I try to, like, the consistency breaks down. So yeah, there's absolutely it's just a grind. I mean, you just kind of have to spend a few hours on it, kind of think it through. I have a nice pad of paper that I just kind of write out ideas on and eventually poke my way through it. But I don't know, I feel like the planning really helps alleviate the biggest parts of that. I mean, if something's not working in a piece of a book, is a lot better than when you don't know where your book's going at all. That's the worst feeling ever. You're just sitting there and you're just completely lost. Yeah, that's never a good feeling.
So will you outline the entire story before, like what is that format like?
So it's a bit an evolving process. So usually when I first start a project, I will kind of just do like a word vomit. Get every single scrap of idea that I have in my head down in writing. It looks a lot different when it's in your mind and than when it actually ends up in writing. It gives you a lot more flexibility to actually see it and then play with it. Once I have kind of like a core concept down, I try to see if there's any standout characters, scenes. Do I want to have anything in mind that are like really strong points, I guess, in the story that I could possibly just nail down or have a vague idea of. Once I kind of get to that point, I try to figure out where the story is going to end, whether in like on a series level or on a book level. If I'm not usually too sure what I want to do in the overall series, I'll try to figure out like a landing point for this book, either a big battle that I want the book to end, or some sort of achievement or special magic power to get, or something like that. And then I tend to work backwards from there. Once I'm pretty confident in the story, I try to do like a chapter by chapter outline. It's usually like maybe just a couple paragraphs of what happens in every single chapter. If I have a particularly strong scene or vision in mind, I'll try to like write a chunk of it in like what do you call, like a flowing thought text process. So it's not quite like a narrative, but it's like any dialogue things that stand out, any exchanges and battles that stand out, and kind of prep myself at that point. And once that happens, I just start at chapter 1 and I grind forward. Sometimes I need to replan stuff more often than not, but as long as they hit the major landmarks of what my original outline is, things tend to move pretty quickly, and they don't usually deviate too much.
And what's your preferred writing program?
I like Word. Yeah, I mean, I know there's a bunch of other programs that'll help out. The reason why I like Word is because I've figured out how to format stuff as I go, so it saves me a lot of time when the book is done that I can just be done. So I mean, I know I can do that with other programs, but I'm very lazy, and I've figured out one process that works, and I don't have the brain power to learn anything else. So yeah, no, I use Word. Depending on what the project is, I will format it where I will have what do you call, like one of my author friends, they're more talented in using Vellum or something else to help me with the final formatting. But at least I'm able to get the document into a very near finished process, almost right from the beginning, just so I don't need to tinker with it in the end.
And
And I mean, it's particularly helpful with the gamey stuff. I mean, I don't know if you've read like the LitRPG stuff with actual stats in it. I'm able to format the stats right away so they don't show up really weird in the end, because that can hurt the reading experience. So that's a big reason why I like the power of Microsoft Word, is just because you can format the stats and they just stay there and they don't ever move again.
Yeah, that's interesting. That seems like an aspect that an author may not have to worry about, is like displaying this information in a way that's accessible to the viewer.
Yeah. I mean, it can look. I mean, my last experience is when you look at it on your phone or on your Kindle or something, the formatting can get really just kind of screwed up, right? I mean, it doesn't become in line, like return characters sometimes get dropped. So like, you have this big long line of stats that's suddenly supposed to be 3 lines, but now it gets dumped onto 1 line, right? And it just becomes like it's a hard to read experience. So I really like the control that Microsoft Word gives me, because I'm just so used to using it, and I can just fix it and it doesn't go anywhere at that point in time, and I just know it's going to show the same no matter what the reader reads it on.
Do you have like a master document that you just write the entire thing in, or do you have specific? Okay.
No, there's one big chunking document, so I can see as it grows from 1,000 words to 200,000 words. So just get that sense of accomplishment as you're going.
Yeah. In your blog, I always notice you do the monthly word count. It's gotta be satisfying just to see it,
Oh yeah. Especially when it grows. You gotta when I'm updating the card or whatever every month, I can say, oh great, 30,000 words in one project. Sweet. It's a big dopamine rush.
Yeah. There you go. That's dope. So what would you say motivates you to write these stories?
Honestly, it's fun. I mean, like I think it's just for the longest time I never really had a creative outlet. And I mean, to be honest, I never really looked for a creative outlet until I realized that it was missing, right? So I mean, like I really enjoyed my career when I was still doing IT security, but I mean, it was very technical, right? I mean, you have a very, A to B solve problem, B kind of make sure that you're protecting the organization, kind of have this very logically minded approach to every single day. And then I just felt like I was missing, like just having, fun in the process. I mean, when I started writing, I just loved the experience of just being able to tell the story, being able to have fun. And I mean, it really does help that a lot of people actually like it. I mean, I can appreciate that having that social validation that people really enjoy and like the story is a huge component to it, right? So but yeah, I mean, beyond that, I mean, it's just the fact that I can do this for a living, right? I mean, I like the process of being able to create for a living. I like the marketing process. I like the sale process. It's just a ton of fun to be kind of your own boss, especially now, just being able to work from home and don't be so stressed at a long commute. I used to have long commutes depending on where I used to work, and that's soul draining. And the whole package altogether is fun.
So yeah, it's a great motivator when one can kind of express their craft through their own sort of system.
Yeah, I mean, like I just love, I love the whole thing. You can see all the art behind me. I mean, just like collecting it. I love the whole creative process of just being able to buy into just making stuff and having fun. I mean, again, like I really make a living just telling stories about goblins and dragons, right? And I mean, how is that not fun for everybody? It's great, right?
Yeah, doesn't get much better. It's interesting to be alive in this time where we sort of have access to these marketplaces where it's almost like the possibility for exponential growth, in the sense that we are, or you specifically are creating a piece of digital content, and that content can then be expanded almost infinitely, because it's not, I mean, sure, you can order the physical copy, but the aspect of this, virtual digital economy is interesting. And I kind of see that mirrored in, I'm going to go back to Ascend Online because it's, favorite one, but the economy that the characters are in is sort of, to my understanding, they are in the game itself, and then that content is then
Yeah, they're streaming it out into the world. I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I feel like right now that's the most popular thing that's happening, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you get to see all these gamers are making a living from their gaming, right? Essentially, and like I was trying to think of what's the next level to that, right? I mean, that was part of my motivation for Ascend Online is you get to see. I mean, I use Warcraft as an example. You get to see people running, the high keys for World of Warcraft, doing like the super challenging content. You get to see like all the what do you call it, like FPS players. Fortnite was a big rush on streaming. What do you call it? I think it's Valorant now, and all the other slew of games, right, where you get to follow particular people and personalities, and they do extremely well, right? So I mean, I'm trying to think of like what's the next format that you can go to, and I was thinking it's like narrative stories that of what people experience as they play, right? So I mean, if you have an infinite amount of stories that can possibly be told in a game, like in Ascend Online, like each group of players can have their own epic sprawling stories, right? So I mean, if you take that and you take that experience and you convert it into a fun struggle that other people can watch, I mean, you get both hits, right? You get to see these people doing fantastic and super enthralling things, and you get to experience it vicariously, right? I mean, you get to be there with them and just have a ton of fun.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Makes you think like what type of games and experiences we're gonna be having in
Oh,
50
it's just like the
years.
Star Trek holodeck, right? I mean,
Yeah.
instead of being like once at the keyboard of the story, you're in the story, right? And the story reacts to everything you do. You're not just following like a railroad track.
Hmm. Was there a reason you chose sort of like nanobots and like this full dive experience versus
Like it was a
hardware?
bit of a trope. It was a bit of a trope at the process, and just doing the disconnects. I mean, I wanted to have kind of a nod of what could happen in the future, right? I mean, like let's say 100 years pass, 1,000 years pass, and we have the technology to do that. I mean, you think about like what are we going to do with our lives? You know what I mean? Like if let's say if we didn't need to worry about energy, if we didn't need to worry about fighting for resources and all of that, like what do we do? So I mean, I read what was one of the Ian M. Banks books. I'm not sure if you read any of the culture novels. I think there was one called The Player of Games or something like that, and it basically touched on that, the whole idea of like the humanity has moved to this post scarcity society, like post scarcity, where people the only trouble that people had was how to spend their time, and a lot of people spent their time playing games and competing with each other with games. So I mean, every single game that you can think of, from dominoes to really complicated chess games to everything. And the whole story basically revolved around one person who was searching for the most difficult game in the universe to play, and he finds it. And I mean, the whole experience is him um, mastering this game and going and playing it, and what do you call that, that's the whole story. And that really kind of resonated with me in the sense of like, if you could do anything, what would you do? I mean, would you just sit and do nothing, or would you build things? Would you create? If you had a chance to explore like an infinite amount of worlds and possibilities, like would you, right? I mean, that's kind of like the inspiration I had for Ascend Online, right? If you can do anything, just what would it be?
Hmm. And what are kind of the stakes in some of your other projects for the characters itself?
So I have two moth in the room. two projects that are kind of classified as LitRPG are kind of in that similar sense. So first is Savage Dominion. Savage Dominion is a portal fantasy. Specifically, if you want to kind of pull from the anime tropes, it's an isekai. So our main character at the very beginning of the book dies. He gets eaten by a big wolf, and he's dead. But he dies in a place where his soul gets picked up by death, and he gets shunted to what is the prime, really like the prime universe. Like Earth is apparently this subsection of the universe where magic doesn't exist, then it follows a different subset of rules. So he gets picked up by death. He gets dropped in front of these gods who actually run everything in the universe. These gods hate each other. They are fighting for supremacy between or essentially order and chaos. And the way that he dies is he essentially gets thrown into the chaos team. Then he gets dropped into this fragmented world called Amaranth, which is the world which all worlds spawned from. And it's this haunted wasteland where the gods essentially wage war against each other for control over the universe. So as he gets dropped in there, he basically needs to solve all the problems of Amaranth as like a fledgling godling. So he's able to die. He gets resurrected in different places as he completes basically trials, kills big monsters, big other people like himself. Like they're called the Eternals within this context of the story, and they're basically able to absorb power from these creatures that they kill and eventually become gods in their own right. The caveat of that is that if they die too many times, their psyche gets fragmented. If they live too long, they can eventually go insane. So I mean, that's a much higher stake than if this is just a game. Essentially, like this is a whole alternate world that's controlled by these super mega powerful gods who are using him as a proxy to wage their war. So he's trapped within the system who needs to basically find a way to break out of it. So that's a lot different than what Ascend Online's more lighter feature is, right? So I mean, it's a bit more higher stakes and like hits you right in the heart, right? If you fail, like not everybody gets a second chance. If they die or not, and there's actually like actual penalties to this sense, right? And the other story, it's not really quite LitRPG. It kind of shares some of the more visual stats. This would be Iron Prince. This is the one that's co-written with Bryce O'Connor. This one kind of falls more into like a newish sort of genre called progression fantasy or progression sci-fi. This is more of a sci-fi book. None of this takes place in the game. It's futuristic society. 1,000 years into the future, we've discovered all sorts of fun technology, and humanity is essentially waging war against the Archons, which are a bunch of robots, aliens, way off into who knows where, right? And the whole story revolves around our main character, Ray, who is a lowest of the low, weak, needs to get stronger kind of guy, as he wants to join the military to help, essentially. And through this process, he gets like a technological device called the CAD, which is he's able to use it to kind of transform, get summon a whole bunch of body armor and weapons on himself. And this is how the wars are fought in this futuristic society. I don't want to spoil it because there's a crap ton of nuance that goes into this, but essentially the whole process is everything is real in that book, and we're using kind of some of the gamey elements to kind of show how he's getting stronger, kind of like I would say almost even in like a Dragon Ball format, right? You just start off as you can kind of survive in the wild against like a wild bear, but then as you progress to the end of the story, you're going to be fighting giant monsters that are kind of defy like the fabric of reality kind of thing, right? But it kind of leans on the same what do you call it, like dopamine buttons that you get out of gaming, but it's a very real everyday kind of story.
Is there a specific I'm forgetting what it's called, the I guess point of view of the author? I know there's like the omniscient.
Oh yeah, there's like the point of views for the stories being told.
Yeah, first person, omniscient, third person.
Yeah, so I don't really think there's there's no wrong way of doing it so long as you do it well. Useless words, I know, but I personally found that it really depends on the story you're telling. um, I like doing Ascend Online as the first person because it's so very close to one character. You have one very close character you're following Lyrian through the whole story, and it's as if you're watching his feed. So I mean, like you're right on top of him as you experience everything that he experiences, and that just works for that sort of story. For Savage Dominion, we decided to do a very third-person limited story. I think we found that that's just the best way to get across. Sorry, I'm not thinking Savage Dominion. I'm thinking Iron Prince. We did a third person limited. It follows Ray through the story, and as he gets stronger, but then you kind of jump to a few different personalities that support him directly. So, I mean, you get to see his struggle as he goes along, and you get to see how other people really close to him or basically react to his struggle to kind of fill in some of those. Just like some of those like bare points, you know what I mean, as you go through the story. Um, I think it kind of just really depends on what the execution is and how it kind of fits your overall plan. I think that if you're doing a very escapism kind of approach, you really want people to kind of like leave the world behind, which really is like what LitRPG is about. Doing it like first person is probably puts you a lot closer to the characters. If you're trying to tell more of just like a wider story, then I found that like a limited third person perspective has worked really well. I mean, like it worked really well for Iron Prince. So maybe it's just a bunch of confirmation bias, right? I'm not sure. That's kind of my mindset.
Hmm. That's interesting. So maybe switching gears a little bit to your previous life, say, as a cybersecurity. Was it a specialist or what was your job title?
For me, so I was, what was I? Oh, geez, I think I was a senior security analyst. When I was working, I worked for both the local government here in Canada, and then I also switched to work at a university. Um, what do you call it? Like it was like a lot of it really comes down to just kind of just supporting the business to be a business. So I mean, you have to wear many hats depending on what you're dealing with. So I mean, a lot of it was monitoring the network, making sure that the local machines within the organization weren't going off and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I know that's really vague to describe, but I mean, essentially, you're making sure that a computer isn't, going to an unauthorized, Chinese address, Russian address, like sending malware back and forth. You be concerned if there's any personal information that's going back and forth, right? Because I mean, like obviously the government doesn't want to have any viruses that are infecting any government machines for obvious reasons. I mean, you don't know what could be happening, what sort of personal information could be being leaked into the greater world. And then on a business level, I mean, you also want to make sure that um, the everything can function. So I mean, like the biggest concern I can give you today is like ransomware, right? I mean, there's been I can't remember the cases where I've had ransomware that just brick, a computer or a hard drive or like an entire network drive of information in either organization, right? It's a very real threat that can just grind everything to a halt, and you need to make sure that people are taking the best precautions to make sure they're not clicking on stuff. A lot of education, a lot of like incident management to fix stuff that goes wrong and making sure it doesn't happen again. So I mean, it was a fantastic experience when I did it. I just lucked into this whole writing business, and I felt it clicked for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you see any crossover?
Just like the logic. I mean, like in managing, like I felt that it's like, having that technological background of kind of even vaguely knowing how to articulate, what is maybe possible, what is not possible. I feel gave me a lot of foundation stuff for Ascend Online, just in terms of how I wanted to articulate the technology. And I mean, I know we've gotten quite a bit of like as we go through the books, we've kind of gotten further away from that. But I think just that analytical aspect of being able to break what I wanted out of the game down and into actual numbers and actually like presenting it in a way that's done well. That was a big piece. I think that helped me out.
Hmm. Hmm. And you mentioned World of Warcraft and what was the other one?
EverQuest.
EverQuest.
Yeah.
What was your class and race?
So in EverQuest, I was pretty young when I started playing. So I think I jumped between a warrior, a monk, and a shaman. I think I played the longest time on the shaman. I just liked the flexibility. Like I think at the time, the shaman was one of the better solo classes and healing classes. So you could heal if you needed to, you could solo if you needed to, and you did enough damage that everybody kind of wanted you around. I can't remember. You had enough utility that everybody wanted you around, so that was a lot of fun. And as I transitioned to Warcraft, I mean, I played Warcraft. Oh, geez, like it's like since the beginning. I think I played on release day, and I went from a rogue to a warrior to a warlock. Then I think back to the rogue for the longest time, and I'm currently playing a monk right now. So I mean, I'm loving the monk class and how it's evolved and become. I get to tank and DPS, which is where my mind's at for most of the time. So um, I don't know. It's fun. It's a fun flexibility of being able to do everything I like within the game, and um, like I wish there was more there was more to play at this point in time, right? If there's any other games that come out, I'm gonna hop on them, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we're kind of reaching the limit of where we can take flat screen MMOs.
Oh yeah,
In a
absolutely right.
sense, yeah.
I think it's just traditional of how we're doing with the content cycles, right? It's a lot of very fixed storylines, and you have to wait. You know what I mean? Like you have to wait for the storyline to progress, and it's only going to get harder to satisfy people, right? I mean, if you look how complicated the stories have gotten in terms of just like any online game, right? I mean, it's you see the nuances in Final Fantasy 14, like how the story has unwound and how much detail goes into managing each content patch, and then like you see the same thing for War of the Warcraft and like Elder Scrolls, right? I mean, the amount of effort and like um, detail that goes into managing the stories and getting people to where they need to be. I think there has to be a break point and somewhere where the players have to be able to manage their own content. And I don't know how to do that yet. I mean, a lot of people resort to PvP as being a major factor, right? Or a lot of endless grinding that for very small, increasingly small carrots as you get towards the end game, right? Yeah, no, I feel like we're kind of hitting a limit, like you said, and I just don't really know what the next steps are going to be to get that extra depth that we need and extra um, engagement, I guess, longer term engagement.
Yeah, I was watching a video the other day where this guy, a game developer, hooked up a AI in the game to text to speech and voice to text, and he basically linked it to an AI model. I think it was like called GPT-3,
Mhm.
and he was basically having a conversation with it, like very rudimentary, but you can almost see that unfolding to its full potential,
Yeah.
like in your novel, just a full person that you're talking to.
Oh, absolutely, and
It's
it just
incredible.
gives you a lot of the flexibility to do more and add layers to the story. Because I mean, if you break down what the current mechanism of playing an MMO is you look around for somebody with either a question mark or an exclamation mark over their head. You click on them, something pops up in your window. You don't read it, you just accept it, and then you look to the right side of your screen and tells you what you need to kill or find, and you go and do it. Right? So I mean, like you're on autopilot, and you're not really like very few people actually fully engage with the story itself. Is you're essentially just chasing the rewards and the check marks for completion, right? 'Cause I feel like if you can do that and you can slow it down and you actually force yourself to actually be in a situation where you actually need to talk to and pick your way through dialogue trees from these NPCs, then um, you can discover things that other players wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, especially like as you get into the deeper parts of say can the NPC account for your faction? How well are you liked in there, and how often do you go back to talk to this guy? And I mean, I can just see like the world of depth just like opening up just further and further when things aren't necessarily handed to you in a very like look here sort of way.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find yourself following along with technological progress in reality and using that to build your worlds? Or
Yeah,
do you step back?
as a high level, yeah. I mean, I always like to see where a lot of the gaming stuff goes into. I mean, I'd love to do gaming stuff just in general. I feel like that's my end dream at some point in time, right? Like I'd love to go there, make a game either even if it's a small, more traditional indie sort of game one day. But like I don't know, I feel there are a lot of there are a lot of opportunities and next steps that are just waiting for like just a lot of scattered technologies to come together. Like I mean, I can't imagine the amount of effort it's going to take to put them all together. But I mean, we've seen the new Half-Life, you know, Alex, what's possible in a VR game there. We could see like I don't know if you've seen any of those 3D art programs where the artist can just like actually paint a 3D scene like in layers. They like walk around and they paint stuff in there. So I mean like that's like absolutely awesome. Like I can't imagine like the amount of detail that's required. I mean I can actually even imagine like instead of having artists just sitting at a desk and modeling something, then maybe they're just going to be like just walking around in a warehouse, you know, with a headset on, and they're just going to be building a bush, you know, standing in the corner. I mean, that'd be hilarious to record and just watch somebody just like waving around a stick in the corner as they're building a tree or something. But honestly, I mean, that might end up being the easiest way to do it. Like literally, you're just going to see people hand sculpting and building stuff um, in just open spaces. And I mean, I'm just excited to see how that's going to work out.
Hmm. Yeah. It's I feel like we're like right in that transitional period, you know, between staring at flat screens and actually
Oh yeah.
entering it.
Well, I mean, even the accessibility of just being able to get a headset. I mean, I know the headsets right now are not. I mean, they're not quite priced out of range for everybody, but I mean, they're not. It's not the same as buying like a Switch. You know what I mean? Like if you get like yourself a console or something, it's a lot more um, flexible, maybe in some sense, than like a very more niche VR thing, right? So I mean, as the technology gets better, as it becomes more accessible, um, I think the just application is just going to grow, right? I mean, you get like more people, more hands it is, the more energy it's going to get from developers, right?
Hmm. Interesting future ahead.
Mm-hmm. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Just gotta get there, right?
Yeah. There you go. Well, sort of last question. What do you think is the meaning of life? Your life.
Meaning of life. I think to create. I think that's the funnest thing you can do. I think I think everybody's responsible to find their own purpose, but having been in this for a few years now, I enjoy being able to make something and look at it, and I think I've kind of gotten to the point where I think I would even do it for myself. I feel like it's too easy to get stagnant, to get into a mindset of just constantly consuming, whether you're just consuming entertainment or, you know what I mean, just living your life on autopilot, you know, watching the same shows over again, doing whatever. I think just being able to like just make anything, just create anything, even like it doesn't have to be great. I mean, like just make something for yourself. I think that's the best expression of life you can get.
Hmm. Brilliant. Well, I look forward to reading more of what you create, Luke.
Awesome. I hope you enjoy. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Cool. Thanks, Luke.
Hey, no worries. That was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I like it. It was a fun thing. Yeah. So how does everything else work? I mean, are you gonna just put this up in a couple weeks, or what's your process?
Yeah, so kind of a little bit more on the not I haven't done the podcast for too long, but what I think I'm going to do is live stream it to my YouTube channel within maybe this weekend or next weekend, and then after that it'll just go live on like Spotify and
Sweet.
Available on the channel. So I'll send you a link once it's up.
Oh yeah, for sure. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like it. I hope it goes well. I hope the day goes well, and if you dig into any more books, I hope you enjoy them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Luke.
Oh, no worries. I say if you are looking for something to check out Iron Prince, that's a lot of fun. People are really loving that, and like I say, I would say it's not similar to Ascend Online, but I think it's a super fun story. So I
Nice.
think you'd probably enjoy it.
Is it read by the Ascend Online narrator for Audible?
Yep.
Nice.
It's for Luke Daniels. So I mean, yeah, if you like Luke Daniels, he's doing a bunch of my stuff. So next week on the 25th, Savage Dominion is going to be out, and Luke read that as well. So that one's really fun. Like it's how do I say? Like again, I say the stakes are higher, but it's like a bit more of a hilarious novel. Like higher stakes. It alternates between some heavy tones and some really funny tones, and the main character is like this kind of dumb, it's like semi meathead kind of guy, but like he always tries to do all the right things. But I think it's hilarious. I think it's the funniest book I've written. So I mean, I think it's, if you're depending on what you're looking for a tone, I think it'd be a fun ride. And then we just finished book 2. So book 2 will be out probably next month.
Nice.
As well, in ebook first, and then the audiobook will follow a few months later. But yeah, if you like Luke, you have a lot of stuff coming.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy.
Thanks.
No worries. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too, man.
Take care.
Peace.